He received a Master of Art in Educational Leadership, then Master of Science in Measurement, Evaluation and Statistics, University of Kansas, Lawrence. I think I will continue. I'll complete the introduction in Arabic. دكتور الغامدي متخصص في
Dr.
تحليل.
Alghamdi is specialized in the philosophies and policies of Arabic strategies, educational strategies. And he held many positions. He worked as a teacher, as a school leader in public and private schools. He worked as a general director of supervision and the directors of education. He works in many Arab and national projects like different programs for and the 20-year program for assessment and evaluation. He worked in different professional programs in Saudi Arabia for evaluation and assessment. He has a long history of experience, and I had the honor of being his colleague in one of the in a period of his journey. So the floor is his, and I mentioned that in any successful educational system, school inspection and evaluation is an integral part of that system. So I'm happy to learn that there is a national framework for educational assessment in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
And Dr. Muhammad will shed some lights on this framework.
شكرا دكتور علي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I will mention some of the things that were mentioned by three of the speakers who spoke before me, some of the main ideas in order to integrate them with my presentation. So Mr. Maxwell mentioned and assured that coherence is very important. Also, Bert spoke about data and it's important. Dr. Hanada mentioned the importance of standards and indicators. All of these things are important and they are main evaluation matters. And in the recent period, there is a greater interest of the policymakers and different systems in terms of development and improvement in order to understand in a better way how students learn, and through knowing how deeper effective factors in this kind of education, and in order to have the foundations for the quality of the performance of educational systems, we have this kind of framework, the national framework for improving and developing public sector and public education in Saudi Arabia as one of the most important things in the frames of education and evaluation. These efforts are important on the national level for ETEC in order to put together the different parts of this field in a technical national frame. There are previous efforts on the international level that was led by the cooperation at the OECD organization, starting from maybe 2011. They exerted some efforts in the same field. So in brief, the framework is important and it is related to the content that needs to be improved and developed in order to have integration and coherence between the different parts of assessment and evaluation and their relation to the curricula in order to have conformity between our policies in Saudi Arabia. There are different parts of main different components of this kind of framework, of this framework. Unfortunately, the presentation is, I'm trying to share the presentation.
ممكن انه
maybe I have some technical difficulties, but I will continue speaking about the different components. The frame is covering the different components of any national assessment program, started from the assessment or the evaluation of the student, which depends on the classroom assessment and the practitioners assessment, starting with teachers, leaderships of schools, um, the school guidance staff and other staffs, and school assessment that talks about different kinds of assessment, self-assessment and external assessment of the school. After that, we have the assessment based on the level of the educational system in general through samples representing all the different components. I'm trying to share I want to share the presentation because the next slide is very important and we may need some time to discuss the different details of this slide. The slide is talking about the conceptual framework of our national frame, and it depends mainly on the next slide, please. It depends mainly on the conformity and coherence and integration between the different parts of this frame. Any national frame in any given country usually starts from the educational goals of that country. So we usually derive from that general frames for the curricula that are being taught in this educational system. And after that, we go to the things that are derived from these frames in terms of standards of content and standards of performance. These are the things that we try to find in any educational system in any country. Yes, this is the slide, the conceptual framework of national assessment. It starts from the goals of the educational system in Saudi Arabia, from which we derive the general framework of curricula, then the specialized frameworks. After that, we have this frame that gathers all of these assessments and conforms them together on different levels. We find here that students are in the center of this process, of this conceptual framework. Why the student is in the center? Because at the end of the day, we need to find the impact of our process, the impact of school on the student, whether in his developmental needs or psychological needs or social needs, without any disconformities or any negative things that may occur. For example, if we focus on the issue of tests or exams, as mentioned by one of the previous speakers, we need to target and to measure what is easily measurable. And this will lead us to mainly focus on tests, and this will make some of the problems in the future. So we need to have integrity between the different components. The center is in the student is in the center. After that, we have the assessment of those who teach students and those who monitor and follow up and support this kind of education in terms of teachers, leaderships of schools, and other staffs of the schools. After that, we have the school assessment that will start soon in terms of internal and external assessment, self-assessment and external assessment. After that, we will have the assessment of the educational system as a whole. These kinds of assessments are required to provide enriching feedback of the different components of the educational system, and this is our goal. The goal is not assessment in itself. Assessment in itself is not a goal, but it's a mean to a goal. This goal is to have feedback for these different components of the process that will help them improve their work and improve the learning and teaching process in order to improve the outcomes and outputs of education for our students, males and females. It is important here to mention that there is a kind of progress that happens from one period to another in some of the components. At a specific period of time, we were waiting for standards for curricula, whether in its general or specialized spectrum, and we also were waiting for some kinds of school assessment and the licenses, professional licensing, and the participation in different kinds of international studies and national tests as well. So today, the different components of this frame are available. They only need some kind of integration in order for them to lead to the delivery of actual positive feedback to the different components and to have the reflection of these feedback on the improvement of the different components. The goals of this framework can be seen in four main goals, as I mentioned before: integration and coherence between the different components of the assessment. They are available, but they need more integration and linking. Also, governance of the different roles and responsibilities in different assessments in all of its levels. This is also another main goal for the framework in order to avoid repetition and doubling efforts. Number three is to have conformity between the goals of education on the national level and the assessment efforts, and to monitor the extent of to which students achieve the goals of main goals of education. Also to monitor, to enhance the regular use of this assessment in order to enrich improvement and the development of our educational policies, and at the end of the day, to share these assessment results with the stakeholders in different components of the educational system. There are some main features for this level. The first one speaks about effectiveness, which is expected to be provided by the governance of roles in different fields. The other theme is related to comprehensiveness, and in the other conceptual level, which is related to the student in their own place and the other practitioners like schools and teachers, and also at the same time coordination and integration between the different kinds of or levels of education and the standards of the curricula and the goals of education, and also the accreditation of different educational tools and aids. Also the integration of data. Data was mentioned in more than one occasion with the different speakers in this session, and previously we had a huge amount of data, but recently we started in terms of the specifically in terms of making decisions to take care of the long going data that uh, will enrich our decision making process on the long run. Also the importance of integration between the executive and assessment parties. This is very important in order to focus our goals and efforts and to make sure that no one party will be doing the work of the other party. So it is important also to have governance of roles in order to concentrate our roles and efforts. Everyone will do their work. There are two examples of such frames, like, for example, Hong Kong. And as I mentioned, that in different countries of the world, these frames are not uh, that different. They have the main five components, but from time to time we find some distinguished things related to the context of the frame. there are different similarities, a lot of similarities between our system and the system in Hong Kong, especially in the assessment tests. They target third and seventh and 12th grades, and we almost do the same. The other example is from Norway. Norway started a long time ago preparing for this, for such a framework, and the OECD organization commended their framework. They have similar fields like our frame here in Saudi Arabia, like, for example, targeting reading, maths, and science in different levels of the educational system, different grades. Also, we have summative and conformative and developmental assessments. We also have different challenges that we face in terms of providing such framework in our educational aspect. Some of these, the main challenges are the availability of a large number of national and international frameworks that need a lot of coordination. Also, a lot of efforts that were exerted in ETEC in order to do that. And we will note that in the matrix that will be in the conclusion of my presentation. Another challenge is that there are a lot of overlapping between executive and assessment agencies in terms of assessing students. This may cause some repetitiveness and duality of efforts. The third challenge is the weak linkage between the national assessments and the national standards for curricula. This slide is speaking about governance and integration. We will pass it in order to save some time, and we will go to the next slide speaking about the most recent preparations for this national framework. We have this matrix that speaks about different assessments of public education in Saudi Arabia as part of our national framework that is followed, that ETEC is going to launch soon. As you see on the screen, we have a system for assessment on the level of student. We start with the student, standards of curricula to identify the goal outcomes that are expected. Also, the specialized and general frameworks of the curricula, speaking about four main phases of our education system. The first one is the foundation, ending with the third grade. The second one is enhancement, ending with the sixth grade. The third is expansion, ending with the ninth grade, and concentration, ending with the 12th grades. We worked on developing the national plan of tests in order to integrate with the international studies. Most of the updates that occurred are speaking about national tests in the three fields, reading, science, and maths, in order to tackle the third, the sixth, the ninth, and the 12th grades, in order to integrate with the international tests like TIMSS, PISA, and PEARLS, as you see, that happens in the fourth, eighth, and 12th grades. So in this way, we will have, God willing, different points of checking, 7 or 8 points for all students, starting from the first grade to the graduation of the 12th grade. We also have education on the level of the school. As I previously mentioned, we have self-assessment and external assessment and school accreditation for the international and private schools. We also have professional licenses for different practitioners. This is, in brief, our perspective of the national framework of assessment in Saudi Arabia. We look forward to conducting a number of workshops in order to agree on the governance of these procedures in different fields with the different key stakeholders and parties in this field, also to build a matrix related next similar to the matrix of the national frameworks, also to discuss the best use of or the best utilization of the outcomes in order to improve the results of education, the outcomes of education, and to have an interesting and enriching journey of learning for our students in Saudi Arabia. And peace be upon you all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Dr. Mohammed spoke about the framework of assessment for schools in Saudi Arabia, and he mentioned the different components and the challenges that they are facing, and the considerations that they took in order to prepare it, and the different things from all around the world.